Cold open. Slow pan across a dark dormitory hallway, a single door left ajar. 5 deaths. 5 different causes. 1 dormitory. Cardiac arrest. A fall. Hypothermia in a heated building. A drowning in a bathtub with no water. And an aneurysm in a healthy 20-year-old with no medical history at all. 5 students, over 5 years, in the same building, on the same floor, Fenwick Hall, room 214, at a small liberal arts college in upstate New York. The county medical examiner ruled every single death natural causes. No connection was ever officially drawn between them. No pattern, statistically, that any coroner would flag. Except for one detail that never made it into any official report. Every single body was found within 3 feet of the exact same object. A small, brass pocket watch. Stopped at 3:47. This is the story of Fenwick Hall, and the 6 years it took someone to figure out that the watch wasn't the thing doing the killing. The first death in the fall of 2013, room 214 at Fenwick Hall, was assigned to a sophomore named Daniel Reyes. Fenwick was the oldest dorm on campus, a converted 1920s sanatorium that the college had repurposed for student housing back in the 1960s. A fact most students found charmingly historic rather than alarming. Daniel was healthy. Track team, no history of heart problems, 20 years old. On October 14, his roommate came back from a late study session to find Daniel on the floor beside his bed, unresponsive. Paramedics pronounced him dead on arrival. Cardiac arrest. The kind that, according to the medical examiner, occasionally happens in otherwise healthy young adults, sudden, unexplained, and statistically rare, but not unheard of. The only unusual detail in the police report was a small brass pocket watch found on the nightstand, stopped at 3:47, which nobody could identify. Daniel's roommate said he'd never seen it before. Daniel's family said it wasn't his. The watch was logged as personal property, returned to the family, and mostly forgotten. Until 18 months later, when room 214 killed again. Building dread. The second death happened in the spring of 2015. A junior named Priya Anand had just moved into 214. The room had sat empty for over a year after Daniel's death, something students chalked up to routine dorm maintenance rather than any deliberate avoidance. Priya fell down the stairwell outside her room at 3 a.m., in full view of a working security camera that showed her walking calmly to the stairs and simply stepping forward, as though the stairs weren't there. She broke her neck instantly. When campus security reviewed her room afterward for personal belongings, they found the same brass pocket watch sitting on her desk. Stopped, again, at 3:47. Nobody on campus made the connection between the 2 deaths right away. Different causes, different circumstances, almost 2 years apart. But a resident advisor named Marcus Webb, who'd worked in Fenwick Hall since Daniel's death, started keeping a private notebook. He'd noticed the watch both times. He wasn't sure what it meant yet. But he wrote the date down anyway, along with a single line. Same watch, can't be coincidence. Marcus was right to be uneasy, because room 214 wasn't finished. Death number 3 came in December 2016. A freshman named Tobias Klein was found in his bathtub, drowned, despite the tub being bone dry, and despite there being no water damage or evidence of any liquid at the scene at all. The medical examiner listed the cause as drowning of undetermined origin, a phrase so contradictory that even the coroner reportedly told Marcus, off the record, that he'd never written those 4 words together in 20 years on the job. The watch was on the bathroom sink. Stopped at 3:47. Marcus requested a transfer out of Fenwick Hall that same week. The college denied it, citing staffing shortages, and told him, not unkindly, that 3 unrelated tragedies over 3 years in a dorm that housed over 200 students per year wasn't statistically remarkable. Old buildings had old pipes, old wiring, and yes, sometimes, unlucky histories. Fenwick Hall had originally treated tuberculosis patients from 1924 until the sanatorium closed in 1959. Hospital records, badly preserved, but partially intact in the town archive, showed that the building's east wing, which included what was now room 214, had been the ward reserved for terminal patients. Patients who were, according to one surviving nurse's diary, watched constantly, so that none would pass unrecorded, as the doctor insisted every case be documented to the final moment. Every case documented to the final moment. The diary mentioned one doctor by name, a physician named Elliot Marsh, who ran the terminal ward with an obsession that unsettled even his own staff. Marsh believed, according to the nurse's account, that the exact moment of death held medical and even spiritual significance, and he kept meticulous personal records of each patient's final second, timed, she wrote, by his own brass pocket watch, which he would not let leave his side. Marsh died in 1959, the same year the sanatorium closed. His personal belongings were never recovered. No family claimed his estate. His watch was never found. Until, apparently, it turned up in room 214, 54 years later, on a dead sophomore's nightstand. Part 3, the climax and the twist. By 2019, 2 more students had died in room 214. A case of severe hypothermia in a fully heated building during a heatwave, and a sudden, catastrophic aneurysm in a 19-year-old with no underlying conditions. 5 deaths total. 5 different official causes. 0 official connections. But Marcus Webb, still working at the college, had spent 6 years quietly documenting every detail, timestamps, room assignments, medical examiner language, and every single sighting of that brass watch. He finally brought his notebook to a professor in the psychology department who specialized in unexplained phenomena, hoping someone with credentials would finally listen. That professor did something none of the coroners, police, or administrators had ever thought to do. She had the watch, recovered from evidence storage after Priya's death and never claimed by family, professionally examined by a horologist, an expert in antique timepieces. What the horologist found made the case both far stranger and far more disturbing. The watch wasn't broken. It had never stopped due to mechanical failure. Inside the case, behind the watch face, the horologist discovered a second, hidden compartment, handcrafted, clearly added after the watch's original manufacture. Inside that compartment was a tightly rolled sliver of paper, covered edge to edge in handwriting so small it required magnification to read. It was Dr. Elliot Marsh's handwriting. 5 separate entries. 5 names. 5 times, all reading exactly 347. And beside each name, a short clinical note. The kind of note a doctor writes while observing a patient's final moments. The 5 names were not tuberculosis patients from 1959. They were Daniel, Priya, Tobias, and the 2 most recent students. Marsh's handwriting had recorded their deaths, decades before any of them were born. Here is the twist that Marcus, the professor, and eventually the college itself had to confront, quietly, without ever making it public. The watch was never the cause of the 5 deaths. It was the witness. Dr. Marsh's obsession with documenting the exact moment of death didn't end with his own passing in 1959. Somehow, nobody has ever offered a scientific explanation. His need to observe, record, and time a death outlived him, tethered to that watch and to that room. It didn't kill the 5 students in 214. It simply waited for each of them to die on their own, by whatever means life or chance provided, so that it could do the one thing it was built for. Watch. Time it. Record it. Which raises the far more disturbing question Marcus wrote at the very end of his notebook. A question nobody at the college has ever been able to answer. If the watch is only a witness, and not a killer, then who, or what, decides that room 214 is where the next name gets written? Aftermath Room 214 was permanently decommissioned in 2020, officially due to structural concerns. It's used for storage now. Students still tell each other the story every fall, usually as a campfire joke, rarely believing it's true. The brass watch itself was never destroyed. Marcus Webb, by then the head of campus facilities, quietly kept it locked, he says, in a safe in his own office, because some things shouldn't be handed off to the next person who doesn't know better. He checked it once, about a year after Priya's case file was closed. Just to see. The watch, which hadn't moved a single second in over 6 decades, was no longer stopped at 3:47. It was running.